G'day. It's time to down your unders. Review and dissection of content from some of the sharpest minds in the game. Hosted by Adam Camilleri. Art of War. Down Under. Hello everybody and welcome to the time of the quarterly points update. Been freaking long in the tooth. We have waited, we have sweated. The game has almost been on pause. Everyone waiting with bated breath to see what would happen to a game that is approaching a level of perfection and balance that is very rarely seen. I am joined by two extremely accomplished gentlemen for the journey through the points updates and the Munitorum field manual. First and foremost, Piotr from Team Poland. You might not know him by any other name. You probably never heard of the guy. He's not on any other shows. He's never represented his nation. Yada yada yada. Hello, mate.
Hello. So I'm Typus, by the way, for anyone listening. Like, no one in my family calls me by my name, even. So when Adam said that he will call me by name, there was part of me that was feeling very awkward.
See, Anthony Vanilla won't come on my show anymore. He won't return my texts. He totally returns my texts. So I just haven't asked him to come on anymore. So I don't get all the Tony V fun that I get with him. So I need a new gimmick.
Okay.
And right now it's going to be with you, mate. Well, at least for that one opening segment. And next we are joined by a man who also needs no introduction. He is definitely one of the 40K brains of the world. He is Nathan Roberts. Hello, brother.
Hello. Gee, I've never had an introduction like that before. I need to get that on my Tinder bio.
One of the brains of the world. Yeah. It's actually not that good. It's kind of backhanded. But you guys have a little show that you're on, and you should definitely tell people about it, because by the end of this episode, they're going to be totally enamored with both of you.
Hopefully, Nathan, maybe you want to introduce our show.
Yes, so a show me and Piotr, or Typhus.
I made him do it. Yes.
We do a show over on StatCheck called Enter the Matrix, which is predominantly focused on teams, because we are that niche little weird group who like playing with friends and traveling a lot, unfortunately. But yes, so we mostly cover team-based meta, team events that are coming up, except for the New Zealand team event, because apparently we keep missing that every single year. And yeah, so if you want to listen to that, we usually do it every other Wednesday, because team events are a little bit more few and far between. So yeah, check us out.
Beautiful. I definitely tune in when I can. I don't know if I've missed an episode yet, but yeah, I always enjoy my Enter the Matrix hour or two, depending on what's been going on, how big the week has been. But we are here to dissect the points changes that have we're recording this, I think, about 2.5 hours, 3 hours after the points have dropped. So very fresh for us. I haven't been able to harvest much. Nathan and myself, we both have had the points changes for a little bit longer than you guys. So we're rare in the know. But Typhus is going to be our hot takes. He's going to be off the cuff, firing from the hip, telling us what he thinks and what has changed in his mind in the landscape of 40K.
And what's important, Adam allowed us, each one of us, to swear once.
Yeah.
And Nathan decided to leave his swear.
Nathan's
to me.
He's far too polite and refined a gentleman to sully himself like myself and Typhus. So I've given each one of these gentlemen one poignant "what the fuck" to use at their discretion on the show. So when we come up to a points change that they just can't understand or deal with, you can drop your once per. This is a CP you're using. It's a once per game, once per episode. But if you want part 2 of this episode, you come over and join us over at Art of War Down Under over on Patreon, where me and these two fine gentlemen will be mostly talking about what the meta is going to look like moving on from this in the next couple of months, in the lead up to the end of the ITC season, the lead into the brand new year, because we've got a good 3 months before the next change, which hopefully will come with points with rules changes as well. So this is going to be a really interesting couple of months, and we're going to go over and we're going to pontificate about who the biggest winners and losers are, what lists and archetypes are going to look like now, especially for some of the biggest changed factions. But we are going to jump straight in. I have both the new and previous MFMs open, and we are going to start off with the Adeptus Sororitas, boys. Nathan, hot take, baby. How did Sisters do coming out of this? They were going into this, they were heralded, they had the best win rate in the game, and we know GW uses that as one of their primary metrics for balance. How did they make it out of this MFM?
So I think it was kind of a key focus where Sisters... So while win rate is important, there's other factors, obviously, that they have to include when they are discussing like factions. So like sometimes it's over-representation, sometimes it's just player population, because something might have a great win rate, but actually if only 1% of the population is playing it, they'd rather have a higher higher percentage of people playing armies, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sisters overall probably took the most overall hits because it kind of felt like they needed them a little bit. I don't necessarily love all the changes. I feel like some of the changes push you more. So obviously the worst offenders bring us a flame.
Yep.
Now the problem you have a little bit is because some of the points go up, it now means that you might be forced to even more likely take Bringers of Flame because that justifies the points costs more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a Castigator now going up to 160 from 150 before. 150 in one of the other detachments is like, it's okay, it's pretty good. It's still a really good base tank. In Bringers, it's very good. But now that it's 160 in, say, like Hallowed Martyrs or one of the others, maybe Hallowed Martyrs is still actually worth the 160. But in maybe another detachment, it's less worthy. But whereas now it's 160, you're like, well, I still kind of need to take Bringers. But,
yeah, you get into this mindset where the unit in your mind becomes untakeable if you don't take it with Bringers of Flame. Is that what you're saying?
A little bit, yeah. So it's like to make the points worth it, I might as well keep the best abilities for it.
Yeah.
But overall, we see Castigators went up, Dialogus went up, Dominion Squads went up, Immolators went up, Morganvar went up, Warsuits went up, Seraphim went up, Triumph went up a lot, but that's very justified. And then Bringers of Flame, all the enhancements went up. Obviously, a couple of little balancing things. Battle Sisters went down a little bit. Zephyrin went down because it made no sense that they were more expensive than Seraphim.
Yeah.
Because they were pretty trash.
So it was a 10-point reduction on Battle Sisters and a 5-point per 5 reduction on Zephyrim, if I'm reading this correctly. The big one we need to talk about is the single biggest points change comes in the form of the Triumph. That is the single biggest points increase in this MFM. She went up 60 points. Typhus, is that too much, not enough, or doesn't matter, still auto-take?
So I think it completely depends on your list. I've been preaching triple exorcists and committing war crimes for a while now.
Yeah, I noticed.
And I think this point change pushes you even more into playing triple exorcists because they are still one of the most effective units. When you look at it, even though the indirect weapons got nerfed because they hit only on 4s, the additional peak of AP actually kind of evens out the averages of the damage, and you still go through with nearly the same amount of shots when you account for everything. And Triumph makes that army way better because the reroll ones and additional mobility just gives you a lot when it comes to Bringers. And I want to resonate with you, what you guys said when it comes to pushing you more into Bringers. I think there's some openings to play other detachments, but Triumph, I think, will be still quite often taken because people for now might think about dropping it, but then you play without it and you realize that those 3 inches of movement that you got or the auto 6 change a lot.
Now, the reason I entirely agree with you guys that Bringers are still going to be the go-to is because we didn't see reductions in any of the other primary archetypes of the other lists, the other possible archetypes that could have come from this. And even more than that, when we get to the next week's rules episode and the rules changes there, we'll even see there were some nerfs to some of the other detachments. Like Penitent Host actually took a hit in some of the rules clarifications and commentary. But the fact that I think they could have really incentivized, playing a bit more of Army of Faith, possibly, people even looking at considering Army of Faith and more Hallowed Martyrs by, dropping things like the Celestants, the Mortifiers and Penny Engines, even just going down a couple of points. I mean, and I still, as much as like Repentia being cheap, I think is a horrible thing for the game. 180 points for 10 Repentia is just hilarious to me.
But I think Sisters took a big hit, like the usual list that we're just spamming 3 of go up by like 200 points.
Correct.
When we will go through all the point changes, then in the part 2 we can talk about how it impacts the game, because I don't think Sisters are in such bad position with what got also hit.
Correct. I'm pretty much the same as you. I think Sisters are going to stay a strong faction, and I don't think this is a death knell by any means. But they did take a significant hit, probably the second biggest hit to the meta list. And we're definitely going to have to wait a while to get down to what I think is the most hit one, because it starts with T and ends with Suns. But Adeptus Custodes is up next, and very simply, 4 models went down. Trajan Valoris went down. Virtus Praetors went down. Whoop-de-doo. And all 3 versions of the non-Telemon Dreadnought went down 10 points, I believe. Trajan went down 10 points also, and the Virtus Praetors are now 70 points a pop. Does any of this make any difference in your boys' minds? We'll start with you, Nathan.
Short answer, no. Custodes are kind of in an okay place at the moment. They're not the most imaginative book. Unfortunately, you're kind of really, after they changed the rules, Shield Host kind of sticks out more than the others. So it's kind of it's a couple of little tweaks. They got more in the last one, and it's just kind of see where they go from there.
Yeah, I think what Custodes need is not points reductions based. I don't think you could, unless you were to literally start lopping 15 to 20 points off a lot of their units. It's not going to make enough of a difference. I think they need the balance slate. I think they need some actual rules changes to some of their detachments, because 3 out of the 4 of them just seem unplayable to me in comparison.
And I think on one of the main shows on Stat Check, guys were talking about like the trio of Custodes, Chaos Knights, and Imperial Knights. Those armies, because of how stat check they tend to be, are very hard to balance. Because if you point something weirdly, you end up with people spamming that one unit.
Correct.
So it is a very fine line to thread on. And I think Custodes also are suffering from competitive abandonment, because at WTC you could see some teams taking them and performing well with them, while single events, you usually don't see them amongst the top players.
That's exactly right. All right, moving on to AdMech. Now, this is a faction in a very interesting place in the meta at the moment. They just seem like the faction that has so much stuff, just endless amounts of stuff, competing with Eldari for just sheer number of units on the table, while somehow having tons of those units being 10-mans rather than 5-mans. But we see both versions of the Electro Priestess going down, in addition to the Onager Doomcrawler, and all the characters that you can barely pronounce and have never seen on the table, that being the Scatros, Dominus, Enginseer, and Manipulus, in addition to Cerberus Sulphur Hounds. What went up here, Nathan, and how big a deal is it?
So it's a little bit of, they are the faction specialists' wet dream, where if you know what you're doing, they are extremely good at tournaments, because there's also that aspect of your opponent doesn't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the obvious things went up. So Ballistari, they were probably a little bit undercosted before. Both sets of birds went up, and then the Vanguard went up, just on the general basis of these are the things that seem to be getting a little bit spammed. So, yeah, it's kind of they didn't take a huge points hike, but enough you have to tweak your list if you're going to spam them. A bit like Sisters.
Yeah, fair. I mean, I have not seen an Electro Priest model since the middle of 8th edition on the table. Are they anywhere now as a relevant take, Typhus?
Okay, I don't think I'm qualified. I don't even know what that issue does. When we were preparing for AdMech for WTC, when our players said, just don't look at them, we were like, cool, we want. And I think that might be the reason why they got cheaper.
That definitely.
I think AdMech will still tend to play the spamming game. They still have very good shooting platforms now with all the rules changes. And when you look at the data, I think StatCheck yesterday, so on Tuesday, they did an episode with looking through all the Pariah Nexus data. And AdMech was just above 50% with very good high player performance when it comes to veterans of the faction. I think that will be still seen here, because you lose 5 birds on the list if you still spam?
Correct. Yeah, correct. Or you lose one of your 4 units of Vanguard and take, a different character and attach for some different spice. 50 points for the Scatros is loan up, yeah? The go gadget legs boy. To drop a unit of Vanguard, you save 45 points, take a loan up, whoop-de-doo, off you go, same list. All right, Adeptus Titanicus, never mind, moving on. Eldari, okay, Eldari saw no points increases, 0 points increases, only points reductions. Both versions of the Corsairs went down, I believe, 10 points per, if I remember correctly. I'll just quickly double check that in the old one. So they were 70, they went down 10 points per, so 20 points less for the 10 models. We also had Shining Spears go down, which isn't going to touch the sides, unfortunately. But Falcons, Fire Prisms, and Wave Serpents all went down 10 points, which could be a thing. Warlock Conclaves and Warlock Conclaves on bikes both went down. And then 5-man units of Wraith Blades and Wraith Guard both went down. The 10-mans stayed the same. What do we think about GW doing this more often, guys? Because, 100% 10 Wraith Blades with a bunch of buffs and a Farseer and Spirit Seer and all these things is not a nothing unit, but 5 of them is a very different beast. It very takes the buffs way worse. Do you like this?
Let me take a lead here on the answer. I really like this change, and I'm happy that it's happening, and I would like it to happen more. Because I think a lot of the changes with the unit strength comes sometimes with the buff of the character attached.
Yeah.
And that buff just scales up way better if you have 10 models. And I think there was like a discussion about demons. For example, the problem is if you attach a character to a 10-man Plague Bearer squad, it doesn't matter what the buff is because there's only 10 of them. But if there would be 20, suddenly the buff scales up. And I think this is a good change. I like it. I still don't think Eldar will see as much of a play. But I think with all the drops, they are good to play because Falcons were already fielded. Yep, sometimes you would see Wave Serpent, although that model with like those little wings sticking out is very hard to maneuver around. But it will not change maybe much in the list. Maybe you will just get like 20, 30 points that you might upgrade at unit to another unit, right? But it is not a massive change on the army level.
Yeah, 110 points for a Wave Serpent seems good, but it's just not an archetype you're willing to lean into. Like Triple Wave Serpent just isn't a thing for Eldar. The only other one we missed was 15-point reduction on the Wraith Knight. Oh, is it time for the Wraith Knight to come back, Nathan? I know it's not, but talk for me.
No, it's still it had its day in the sun. It's a little cheaper now, more in line with some of the Knight options, but it's still not good.
All right, moving on to one of my mains, Astra Militarum. Bulgrin launched out of a cannon into the sun. 40 points more for 6 Bulgrin, the second biggest points increase in the MFM, as far as I can tell. And a lot of people will say very necessary. 40 points is a lot. Is this too much, not enough, or just right, Nathan?
You've got to compare them to similar esque units. So the things that are in the same kind of category, you've got to look at Deathwing Knights. You've got to look at things like Blight Lord Terminator, not Blight Lord.
Death Shroud
Terminators.
Yeah, Mega Knobs.
It's kind of that area of points. Now, for a unit that is obnoxious as Bulgrin are, with the ability to be -1 damage and a feel no pain on multi-wound models, they have to start being at the point where they are a costly unit for you to take, because at 180 previously, you could take 18 without really, it's just over a quarter of your army, and they were just such board control given to you, where that premium needs to be paid for. Because if you look at Deathwing Knights, granted, Deathwing Knights are more expensive, but they have one less model, but anything with -1 damage and a feel no pain.
Yeah. I agree. I think they are two of the most impactful rules you could have in 40k right now. In addition, we saw decreases to the field ordnance battery, and heavy weapons teams. Joy, everyone rejoice. Then we also saw points reductions to Ogryn, which I'm quite excited about, and I'll talk more about on part 2. The only other decrease we saw was Scout Sentinels going down by 5 points per model, which I'm actually quite excited about. I think that's actually a very good change. Seeing more of a differentiation between them and Armored Sentinels, I think, is good. So now it's 10 points difference between Armored Sentinel and a Scout Sentinel. And the tank commander went up 15 points. Now, a lot of people have already seen many in Astra Militarum Treadhead lamenting, why did my tank commander go up? I'm going to foreshadow, if you haven't seen yet, they got squadron. They got the squadron keyword added to their data sheet. So I actually think they still came out better when it's all said and done, because they now get full access to all the buffs in the books and all the stratagems and all the goodness. I think they could have gone up 25 points, and I still would have been like, that's totally fine. Typhus, what do you think about that hot take?
Let me first use one of my two what the fucks, which is why Aquilons didn't go up.
Yep. So Aquilon, Tempestus Aquilons are 90 points and still 90 points. And you have to believe that, I'll foreshadow also, Imperial Agents are virtually the same as the back of their book. And we've seen this with Games Workshop done before. Then they're willing to, when they print a book, to not instantly invalidate the entire dang thing, invalidate models before they've seen any data. And I like that they're being data driven with their changes and not just, spurned by, public outrage, in this case, public outrage, but, public opinion. Wait to see the data come in before you do any drastic changes or knee-jerk reactions. But yes, 90 points. Typhus, how much do you think they should cost?
Probably around 110, 120.
I was thinking 110, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't go higher than that, probably. They just seem so cheap for 90 points when you compare it to other units in this faction. When you compare it to, 10 Tempestus Science or 10 Kaskin, it is just...
Yeah,
weird.
Well, both of those units are, so it's 10 and 20 points more expensive, both those units. Aquilons have nowhere near the damage output, but so much more jank. Jank. Just brutal levels of silly jank. Nathan, what do you think?
Yeah, anything with a innate built-in 3-inch deep strike is difficult for the game. So, yes,
except the autocannon guys in Marines, right?
Yeah, that's fine. But you pretty much can't buy those models. GW doesn't actually sell.
Yeah, they don't exist anymore. They're actually legends. Just in waiting. Legends in waiting.
So yeah, at 90 points, they are very undercosted to the point where they still keep guard in actually a very competitive place.
Yeah, I think
I like the changes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as a guard stan, I would have been like 40 points knee jerk. Oh, that's too much. But I was already not super loving playing Bullgren already. There was a very boring part of my otherwise very enjoyable, move my little Tonka trucks around experience. So I'm very ready to drop Bullgren and just take heaps more boys in metal boxes, and that looks like where I'm going. So onwards and upwards. Black freaking Templars. The Castellan and the Marshal both went down, I think 10 points each. I'll double check that in a moment. But Chapman Grimaldus up 10 points, Helbrecht up another 10 points. 20-man Crusader and Primaris Crusader squads both up. In addition, the 10 Primaris Crusaders are up, and it looks like 20 points on the 10. So it looks like 40-point increase on 20 Primaris Crusaders. How do we feel about this, lads?
So this is probably, other than Sisters, probably the biggest overall nerf to a particular build in the Templar swarm of people just taking 100 dudes. You're now probably more in the lines of taking 80 and maybe another small squad. I don't hate that change because that's a kind of list where if we can avoid playing super horde armies, it would be nice. They are very, very, very stat checky to the point of you have something to do with them or you literally just get rolled over.
I call them an unfun maker or unfunner maker. It just literally either I can cakewalk over this or I have like a 0.0001% chance of winning this game.
And I think if we go to 80 instead of 100, that just kills the idea of the list because you are no longer hitting that threshold of exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree with that take. I still think there is a very good Black Templars list waiting in the wings, which I'll talk about more on part 2. But yeah, Templars, their best list definitely got hit. But happily to say it wasn't a holistic hit. Like we didn't see increases to any of the vehicle variants or the Sword Brethren or any of their enhancements. I actually assumed Transhouse's Bones was going to go to like 50 points. If you had have asked me, I was like, that's one of the hits. Tranhouse's Bones, slap it to 50 points. Giving 40 wounds of guys a 5 up, I feel no pain, just is, I would pay 50 points for it. It's crazy good. All right. Blood Angels. This one is going to be hard to dissect because essentially these are brand new points, because a lot of these units, we almost have to take these units as a brand new view on this, because of course Death Company Marines with jump axe, their outfit and what they can take and how deadly they are has completely changed. The Mighty's, brand new model, whatever. Sanguinor, Mephiston, brand new models and a couple of brand new rules there. And of course Sangard changing from 5 and 10 to 3 and 6, but getting an extra wound. So this has a lot of red and green on it. But I'm not going to give a shit about that. I'm just going to read out points, and you tell me if this is a good amount of points for the model. First up, Chief Librarian Mephiston, 125 points.
That feels cheap.
Send it. Auto take, baby. That guy is busted at 125. And his twin of the Bash Bros, the Sanguinor, is 140. But I think that is fair enough. Sanguinor 140 is pretty good.
That sounds okay.
How do you guys feel about 6 Sanguinary Guard for 270 points?
It's a bit more in line than where the actual Codex points are, but again, that is a wait to see where their data is in a couple of months.
Yeah.
And also them being on 40 mils changes quite a bit when it comes to how they fit on the board. And some of them, weird stuff. Some of the models have their swords or like the spears up.
Yeah.
So it might make them stick out of the terrain as well. So we'll need to see how it actually impacts, because that one might be a massive change for the models themselves, how they play.
The logistics, yeah, exactly right. I would say the wider meta comparisons, you can't really compare Sangard to things like Bulgrin and Deathwing Knights because they are more of an offensive rather than a defensive. The comparison that's been thrown out by one of my good mates, Dean, is Exalted 8-bound, as in the comparison points-wise for what a Sangard provides now, especially now that they're 3 and 6 models. I'll quickly jump down and check how many points they are, but how do we feel about that as like, this is what this unit is kind of similar to now? Yeah, 310 for 6 Exalted 8-bound versus 270, so 40 points less for the Sangard, where they have a similar damage output. The Sangard are faster all the time, but the 8-bound can be faster some of the time.
Hard to tell for me. Maybe Nathan, you have something to say about it.
World Eaters is a weird example, because World Eaters is that it's probably in the game, it's one of the hardest ones to balance because it is so kind of down one route of just combat. And they're very much, it's a bit like Thousand Suns as well, actually. World Eaters and Thousand Suns. They're very much on the knife edge when it comes to meta. If you drop the points too low, everybody jumps on them. They start crushing tournaments. Put the points too high, they don't get enough output. They don't break the point, don't have enough break points where they actually start overloading people, and then people stop playing them. So they're very difficult to...
Yeah, and I see that as a symptom of having a very small sandbox of unit options. You can't build the granularity between one unit and another. A unit's either good enough or it's not, because there's no ability to put a bunch of incremental units in between. For example, a Rubric Marine and a Scarab Terminator. You can't really compare the two, and there's nothing in between those two. There's no chosen, so to speak, between those two to look at as the granular step up, step down. And so, yeah, perfect example, Nathan.
Yeah, those lists just don't pivot well when changes happen.
Yeah, they feel every change. Yeah. Chaos Demons, and I am left with. I'm tempted to use my one of here. I'm tempted to, but I'm saving it if I know what I'm using it on. Chaos Demons saw 2 things go down when I think you could have reduced the points on probably about 80% of these models, at least in the increments that we're seeing. Like, they should definitely reduce the points on 10 Seekers of Slaanesh. Keep 5 the same, reduce the 10 model unit by 10 points, so to speak. Same as 10 flesh hounds. They need to do the opposite. Whereas in demons, if you have a larger unit versus a smaller unit, make the larger unit cheaper rather than, vice versa. We saw with the Wraith Blades and stuff like that. Seeker Chariots. Who the hell wants to use a unit of 2 Seeker Chariots? It's a single. And that's it. So make the unit of 2, freaking 20 points cheaper. Why not? Because right now, all that went down was Beast of Nurgle went down 5 points per model, and Shalaxi Hellbane, I think, went down 15. She's 425, but I'll confirm that in a minute. And the Renmaster went up on that old Blood Throne. Typhus, is this a head scratcher for you like it is for me?
Absolutely. I still don't know how demons have such high win rate when you look at the data. I think this is mostly people playing gotcha. Or opponents deciding that great unclean one that has 4 up, feel no pain must be shot by him.
Is killable, yeah.
Yeah. If I just focus him for 2 turns, I will surely win the game after, right? Surely. I don't know. I think this army needs a little bit of redesign, and that's something that I know Ines touched on, and I really like the idea that it might be something that needs you to bring the squads to be even bigger, so attaching characters actually makes sense. And suddenly, if you play like 20 mans, you are dealing with something that can be good because of all the overlying buffs over relatively weak models. So you can make the buffs better.
The only way I will agree to that is if 20 pink horrors is 400 points.
Oh yeah,
that's the only way.
Don't do that. Agree. Don't do that one. No. I played 300 brimstones. I never want to go back again.
Never. We're never going back, guys. She actually went at 25 points, by the way.
And I think that's okay.
Yeah, it is good. It's good that she went down, but
I think demons struggle with a little bit of internal balance because of how cheap the big demons are and how frail the small ones are.
Yeah.
That you cannot really build a list that doesn't include 4 or 5 big ones. And I think, Nathan, you also had quite an experience with all the problems of demons, right?
Please don't remind me.
Well, go on, mate. What's your hot takes on the demons changes? Are any of these relevant? And what would you have changed if you could pick one thing you would have put up or down? What would it have been?
So it's kind of they got a load of points changes in the last one.
They did.
The data shows that they're actually in quite a good place. So it's that little bit of a don't change everything for the sake of changing everything, because that's caused issues in the past where stuff from the bottom jumps to the top and stuff at the top jumps to the bottom. That kind of vague, like painting the brush of the whole meta. But yeah, Renmasters, I actually think they're a bit of a crutch to all demon armies. So
I agree.
Fine, they go up. I would have liked to have seen some things like demonettes go down a little bit. They seem a little bit costly. I don't mind. I probably wouldn't have bothered with the chariots at all, the Slanesh ones, because, to be honest, they don't really work on 40k terrain that much anyway. A few things going down, like lesser demons. Yeah, obviously the idea of 20-man units is much nicer for them, but they've chosen not to do that, so it's just kind of where they are at the moment.
I'm of the opinion, apart from the Great Unclean one, they could have knocked 20 points off every Nurgle model except for Nurglings and Great Unclean ones. What the hell does what does a Plague Drone even do in 10th edition? I've not seen a plague drone in 10th edition. Mostly because you can't not get them shot, because they're massive bases and their wings stick out in every angle. But anyway, moving on. Chaos Knights saw only decreases. The Knight Abominant now costing 365. I believe that's 15 points down, was 380. Knight Desecrator at 410. Despoiler 415. War Dog Brigands went down 5 points per model, as did War Dog Huntsmans and Stalkers, gents. How do we feel about the Chaos Knights and their changes here? Because I did not expect any of the War Dogs to go down, but the data does show that Chaos Knights are struggling quite a lot at the moment. But the reasons they're struggling is not points related. The reason they're struggling is because they have had one build for all of 10th edition, and now everyone knows what it does and everyone knows how to beat it, is my opinion on why Chaos Knights are struggling more than their list just being bad. It's actually a good list, but everyone is good into it now. How do you feel about that hot take, Typhus?
Yeah, I think the meta was just very good at killing tanks at this point. And that will always be a thing that you will see in Chaos Knights, depending how the rest of the meta turns around. Other armies will be good into Chaos Knights. If you are preparing for Deathwing Knights, you also somehow prepared for Chaos Knights in a weird way, right?
Same thing for Dread Knights in Grey Knights.
Or the hyper-thick lists. There's so many armies like that. Nearly all Bringers lists were fielding at least 5 toughness 10 tanks. So it's just something that meta was prepared for that. And I would also say that to some extent, Chaos Knights were hurt by the pariah changes overall with the play patterns, because they used to be a rush army that would deny you primary and keep you to low score. And for a moment with the secret missions and whatnot, you could just
survive.
Yeah. And suddenly, like, doing an action that you need to survive with 2 knights, you sometimes won't do it because it is not that hard to grab an angle on a knight, or like doing a sabotage with a knight in no man's land. If they are touching that objective, they are usually just sticking outside of the terrain. So I think it is a combination of the primary changes and the secondary changes that was hurtful, combined with the meta that was more volatile and more tank oriented.
Agreed. Okay, moving on to Chaos Space Marines. I'm going to turn this one over to Nathan. Tell us about the changes here, mate.
So again, Chaos Space Marines are kind of in a weird place where very high player population, kind of a weirdly low win rate, but very good players get very good results out of them. I think the biggest changes being Accursed Cultists and Dark Commune both went up significant amount of points, and to the point where they are plus 30 a unit now. So again, as you've seen in other things like the Black Templars, if you want to spam these units like Sisters, then you're going to have to put your list out. So you're going to have to drop a lot from your list to fit them in. So taking 3 Accursed Cultist unit with characters now is an extra 90 points you've got to find, whereas the rest of CSM pretty much has gone down. Very little else has gone up.
In some exciting ways, actually. So only the Accursed Cultists and the Dark Commune went up, right? Everything else, there's actually quite a few things that went down. Of the things that went down, what has you turning your head or interested?
Obliterators. Again, it was one of the few things that actually still has indirect, but has actually gone down now. Everything else kind of just crept up. There's a couple of nice things. Legionnaires go down 10 points per 10. You might even see 10. It's a little bit of the issue of you front load all the special weapons and all their extra gear in the first 5, and then the next 5 Legionnaires get basically nothing. So they're a bit more useful. Possessed going down a little bit, that helps. But I think the main one that you might now start seeing, Obliterators. I know Liam, who won LGT, had 2 units, so his list actually goes down 20 points. The other thing, it's kind of a stealth nerf that you won't necessarily see, but obviously things like Rubric Marines, which we'll go on to later, do go up. So people who were using lots of those units actually got some of tax to their list. Because their points are the same. They're not like an agent scenario. I think Warp Talon's going down 10 points for the 5-man, but then keeping as the 10-man same points. That's a nice change, because actually 5 Warp Talons felt pretty bad at 135. But 125 is a lot better.
I actually really, really like the Warp Talon change. Sorry to interrupt, mate.
That's right, man. And then Abaddon going down also is just nice.
Abaddon down 15, along with his most likely counterparts in the Terminators, might see some units come back. I do quite like that unit in what Liam's been taking in the Veterans of the Long War detachment, like Abaddon with all his buffs plus Terminators plus Oath and all that good stuff. But we'll have to wait and see if it's worth taking. The Oblitz, I'm with you, mate. The Oblitz is the big change for me. Typhus, what's your takes on CSM?
Yeah, I think the biggest change that is not written here is in the rules that you guys will talk about. But with how popular Accursed Cultists were, and with all the changes to Blood Surges, that one is a change that I think will push people more into playing something like Liam or what Josh were playing. And that's more MSU builds, be it in Raiders or in Veterans. I don't think the Terminators will make an appearance, even with the drops.
Yeah, I didn't
And
expect them to.
when I see those changes, I just think in more of a Polish context that Skark will just now include obliterators in his gun lines.
Yeah,
And that's the main change.
Fair enough. Vashdor did go down and saw some rules changes that should make him a little bit more appealing in some detachments also. All right, on to my other main bay, the Dark Angels. Azrael has gone up. Is it 10 points or 15? 10 points?
10.
Deathwing Knights up 15 points. So they're 250 for 5. And I kind of feel like that's fine. How do you guys feel about that one?
Reasonable. Yeah.
I think the army was not performing as well as we thought it would. It was good, but it was very terrain packet dependent, and you could see it in, for example, UKTC not being as good with how far away the terrains were from each other.
Yeah,
was on WTC or GW, the army was significantly better.
What a coincidence! The only formats John Lennon plays where he is undefeated with this.
Who would have thought, right?
Who would have thought? Yeah. We've seen those are the only two that have gone up. We have seen points reductions to Land Speed of Vengeance. Who cares? Unfortunately, 15-point reduction on Lionel Johnson, becoming a little more enticing, but still probably not enough. 10-point reduction on the Ravenwing Command Squad, which I do quite like. I would love that to go down a little bit more, and/or their accompanying bikes to go down a little bit more. And Samael down 15 points, I believe. Yes, 15 points. And I know I'm a meme dreamer, but I really like Sammy. I think Sammy's sick.
I haven't seen any of those units fielded in a competitive list in whole 2 editions, I think. So
how dare you disrespect me like that? You're saying my lists aren't competitive. You were absolutely correct, sir. Never mind.
Yes. And I don't think this will impact enough. It might incentivize you to take one of these. If you really like Lion model, sure, you can bring him. He's not bad, but he's not insane for his point cost. So
he just needs one relevant aura buff. One of his.
I would prefer just 5 Deathwing Knights over Lion.
100%. Yeah.
Any moment.
Yeah, 100%. You would take 5 Deathwing Knights, save 35 points over the line, and that's the issue, right? Yeah. But overall, Dark Angels came out kind of just fine. Azrael going up.
They were also impacted by the changes with Space Marines that we will get to later, and those changes hit the units that Dark Angels were already fielding. So,
and Azrael being at 105 points was absurd. Absolutely,
115 is still cheap.
It's still cheap as chips. He's still auto take. Next, on to one of what I believe may be the biggest beneficiaries of the points changes to other factions, and got some of their points changes themselves. Death Guard, Biological Putrefier is down. Death Shroud Terminators now 220 points for 6 models. Not bad. And the only other change is Mortarion now at 300. He is actually quite cheap for a Great Unclean one.
Yeah.
There's my little dig. But Nathan, what do you make of the Death Guard changes? Because I do believe they're a beneficiary of a bunch of the other factions being nerfed.
Yeah, they got a nice little boost. Mortarion was in that awful place of he has a fantastic aura ability. Then his chosen aura ability is okay. It's not bad. It's real ones to wound. It's okay. But he was just
anemic.
Yeah, it's just you run in, even with your 5 slap attacks, you run in and go, I'm probably not going to kill anything significant. I might kill 3 Marines. Cool. Yeah, you can sweep, but his sweep isn't multi-damage, so it's it's anemic. But he's now at a price point where 300 points for an army buffer in a meta where there is a lot of -1 damage, there is a lot of AOC knocking about. That ability to ignore modifiers is, because this is the full version of it, it adds a lot to that army.
And I think it is quite well positioned in the meta.
I agree. Totally agree. I actually would like to point out that War Dog Brigands going down by 5 points a model is actually a buff to Death Guard as well.
Yes, that too.
But yeah, the Death Guard I actually expect to do quite well. Here's a funny thing I've just realized, yeah? Lionel Johnson has the stat line Mortarion needs, and Mortarion has the buffs and aura abilities that the Lion needs. They're both like suck in the opposite way.
Yeah.
All right, here it is. Drukhari. What in the living fuck did Drukhari do to deserve what has been done to them?
May I use my second what the fuck here?
Join me, my good man, in our what the fuckness.
Yeah, I cannot comprehend this. I think this is something that Drukhari were like mid-table menace.
Yeah.
If you didn't read the rule set that said kill my transports and then I cry, then this army could run over you because they would do stuff like disembark, kill, and go back to a vehicle, and you'll be like, oh no, what can I do? But as soon as you just target the vehicles early, then suddenly this army doesn't work.
The only 2 units I expected to go up for Drukhari, and I actually expected units to go down, and some of those units did, like Hellions, but also expected things like Grotesques to go down, possibly some other bits and pieces. But the only 2 units I expected to go up in Drukhari was Beastpacks and Lilith. And I think that would have been fair, especially if they got a couple of reductions. Instead, we have 10 points more on Archons. How much did Beastpacks go up? One sec.
I think 15.
15 points on Beast Packs. Quarter the Archon going up, I believe, 10 points for, I have no idea why. Drazar going up 10 points. I have no idea why. Incubi going up 10 and 20 points for 10 models. So you pay 10 Incubi with an Archon went up more than Deathwing Knights. Lilith Hesprax went up 10 points. Mandrakes went up 5 points for 5 models. 10 models stayed the same. Reavers, the unit of 3, went up 5 points also. But Hellions went down. Yay! Hellions went down, 10 points per 5. Nathan.
So
what's going on?
A little part of it is a little bit of the Ynnari thing. If you So Reavers and Mandrakes were, for how many just core abilities they have, were arguably undercosted. So them going up kind of makes sense. I get that. Especially because you can also bung them in 2 different armies. Lilith, sure, she had to go up. Incubi is an interesting one because while they are very fragile, that combination, they probably didn't need the Archon and Incubi going up.
Yeah.
Because the combination of them, don't get me wrong, when you fully buff them up, they do slap. If they're hitting infantry, maybe not, they still go through tanks to be fair, but something that has full reels to hit and full reels to wound and is that magical 2 damage into elite armies is devastating. So it is a little bit of that glass cannon aspect. Did they deserve to maybe go up 30 unit? It's difficult because the problem with the Archon is the first one should go up points, but the second 2 shouldn't because it's the having a vectability on a semi-hidden model that is a combat character is very powerful in the meta these days. So I can see why an Archon goes up, but it's very difficult to balance for the second and third because they don't have the aura.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that if they were going to do one of these, the Archon should have gone up by itself because the Incubi without the Archon are nothing. They are so much worse. And so you just hit the Archon, leave the Incubi alone. I mean, hit the Archon by 5 more points, make it 90 points, and then just leave Incubi exactly where they were. Would have been more justified than what's happened here. All right, I'm going to try and not be sad, so we're going to move on because All right. This is going to be a fun one. Who feels qualified to talk about GSC now? Probably 2 people on the planet, but we're going to give it a go anyway.
I feel semi-qualified after spending so much time with Ines and watching all of his videos on StatCheck.
My man, go nuts.
So now, probably after I do this, Ines will message me and tell me that I know shit, and then Eric will just mock me online, and I'm ready for it. But I think all those changes are quite nice because the army was not performing insanely well unless it was piloted by a very good player.
By a best player in the world kind of caliber, yeah.
Yeah. And to be fair, if Ines had like very good track record. Eric has very good track record, but then you see the results in the meta being like 46% win ratio or something like that. Sure, the best players will get better by getting one more unit in their list, but does it change that much for them over the list? Not really, because they were probably still winning, and that's one more unit with flamers or something like that on a list basis. So it is not that massive, but for other players, it might be impactful. So overall, I don't think those changes are massive. They just give you a little bit, and they also hit units that you didn't see in those lists that were brought by Ines or Eric. So,
well, yeah,
except maybe like the hybrids, yeah.
Yeah, the Acolyte hybrids, both with the auto pistols and the hand flamers, both went down. I think 5 points per 5, so 1 point per model.
And jackals.
And the jackals, yeah, the unit to jackals.
And also neophytes. So like all of those units are cheaper, but it might fit you one fight more.
So you're saying the entire core of their armies is cheaper? That sounds pretty good, Typus.
Not the vehicles. I think this is good. I think this change is good because we are now in the state of people knowing about GSE from Eric and Ines, and they perceive the army strength by those lenses. But I think this army still requires a massive redesign when it comes to Cult Ambush rules. And this is something that also GW mentioned. So I'm looking forward to that. And for now, I like those changes. Maybe it will incentivize people to bring units or characters that are not played, like Aberrants or some of the characters. I know Aberrants were played by Danny. But still, those units are not as popular. So I like it overall.
On face value, like in a vacuum, 75 points for a Patriarch seems pretty damn good. I mean, you pay 5 points less now, I think, for a Lictor when we get down to it. So if you're saying for 5 points you could upgrade a Lictor to a Patriarch, you'd probably do that most of the time. So there is some cool things going for him there. What I'm really interested to see is that what the backhanded effect is for GSC, because even if there were some decent predators out there for some of the top players in the world playing with this army, some of those have been removed now. Like I know GSC didn't love dealing with high toughness, but a lot of the high toughness stuff is gone, and we're going to see a lot less of the oh no, I can't kill you Bulgarin running at them as well. So I'm interested to see where they go from here, and also if they get good, can people just metaphor them easily? Really excited to see what happens with GSC. I think they are pretty much the faction to watch, in my opinion, apart from one other we're going to get to. But Grey Knights is up next. We're seeing reductions to 5-man Paladins and 5-man Terminators, in addition to Purgation squads went down also. But this doesn't change much of the beans in your minds, boys. It doesn't really change much for me. I think Grey Knight's one of the least affected factions.
Yeah, and it also affects units that were played to some extent, but like the 5-man Terminator squad, sometimes you saw this with 2x5 with a librarian or like Drygo, but you never saw 5-man Paladins.
Yes, it's true.
So I don't think this is a massive change.
Nah.
I have no real opinions about it. This doesn't change how the faction plays. Maybe sometimes you will see a Purgation squad instead of Interceptors because you have a reason, but after the nerf to Indirect whilst using Torrent, they might not be played still. So
all right, Nathan, tell us all the Imperial Agent stuff, mate, because there's so much is going on here, brother.
Nathan is not here. I think he dropped. So
fair. Typhus. Imperial Agents. They pretty much have all, with the exception of one unit. I am pretty confident saying that all their points are the same as printed in the back of their book. The only one that's different is that Subductor squads, when taken as allies, have gone up, I think, 10 points from 90 to 110. So to 100. Sorry, 90 to 100. How do you feel about Imperial Agents at the moment?
I still don't know what to say about the faction. I feel like it kind of misses any damage when I was reading through the faction, and it felt more like a blunt go get draws army. I need to see it being played, and I think this is something that needs to get hobbied up by players before we see it actually being played. Because
and this is one where I'm very
60 subductors. Like, come on.
Yeah, and I'm very happy that GW didn't change them. They just we're going to go with that as printed until we know otherwise, and I think that's just fine. All right, moving down to Imperial Knights, Canis Rex has gone up. I think it was, I can't remember if it was 15 or 25 points. He was previously 435, and he's now 450. So yeah, he went up 15 points rather.
Yep.
Which is totally fine, right? And then we've got reductions to the Castellan, Errant, Gallant, and Valiant.
All of those that weren't played for a reason.
Yes, correctly. Not taken for a reason. A lot of people are looking sideways at the Gallant all of a sudden. But I mean, if Chaos Knight players aren't taking the Rampager, which I think is better than the Gallant, I don't know why Imperial Knight players will take the Gallant.
Yeah, I don't think those changes matter much. I don't even understand. Like, I can see why you take Canis higher because of how often it was taken as an ally, but I feel still like it wasn't that great.
Yeah.
Because this is something, when we were talking about meta, right? Everyone was preparing for a tankier meta, and just Knights suffer from that.
Yeah. Yep. Surprisingly, though, Imperial Knights seem to do quite well in teams, as definitely as we saw at WTC. There was a couple of very strong nations bringing Imperial Knights that did pretty well.
But they were still bringing like 7-8 points per game, not above 10.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. They weren't crushing it. They turned out to be quite a good shield, though, or a defender. So Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights are two factions that I would love to see to get the Imperial Agents treatment, where they have another subset of points if taken as allies, because then I feel like that GW could be a lot more interesting with the points for the mono knight lists.
But as we mentioned when talking about Custodians, this is a faction that is very thin line from being broken by just something being too cheap.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, 510 for a Castellan, especially with it could have Mythic Hero. There is a points level that a Castellan gets to with that ability that gets busted. That is just like yo ho ho 450 points for a Castellan with Mythic Hero that just comes down and annihilates a flank. Yep. Uppy downies. All right, moving on to the Leagues of Votann. I think we've had Nathan just rejoin us.
Sorry, all.
You're all good, mate. He did state before he has a wooden computer, so he's got to do what he got to do.
Yeah, to be fair, it's impressive that it runs.
Leagues of Votann only saw 2 changes. Hearthkin Jaegers up 10 points. A 5-man unit of Hearthguard down 10 points, if my numbers are correct. Any significant is that a significant change at all, or is this a much of muchness? Leagues of Votann were just fine, not broke. Don't fix it. Nathan, you just rejoined us. You go for it.
Yeah, that's very much the case. It was a case of Jaegers, again, for a 10-man squad with Infiltrate and actually being weirdly good in combat, etc.
Yes.
It was kind of one of those, they were a little bit undercosted when they came into the game. Hearthguard, it's nice at the 5-man because it's, again, you only really see 10-man units because it maximizes abilities, maximizes strats, etc., etc. So it justifies taking 5-man squads a little bit more.
Yeah, but 150 for 5 feels pretty good. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, Leagues of Votann, again, like you said, they're not busted. They don't need any overhaul. Kind of leave as is, really.
Yep. So now we're moving on to Necrons, which has a lot of red and a lot of green. Typhus, TLDR some of this for us, mate.
It was hitting units that were cheap and scoring. Like, that's the main things that I see when I look at it, like the Solo Destroyers or Death Marks, and also hitting the big Destroyer squads. So that's the biggest hit. Also, like, monoliths, I believe, are going by like 20, 30. Same with
25. Yeah, 25 up on the monolith.
Yeah. And this makes, like, I was thinking, that makes the Hyperfix list more expensive. But then I looked, Doomsday Arcs are also down, which were also played in those lists. I think a list net chain loses like 1 solo Locust Destroyer overall.
Honestly, I was kind of running some of the numbers, and you drop. So I think if you drop or downgrade a unit of Death Marks, if you just delete a unit of Death Marks, you're like 5 points under on like on the meta lists.
And so I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's fair.
Sometimes your play into Hypercrypt was to kill all their chaff to make sure they have to score with their expensive stuff. I think that's the way to do it, because I don't feel like those very expensive units were insane. It was the problem for Crypt with how well it scored with those small units.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Looming a threat of at any point, like dunking you with heavy destroyers, monoliths, Silent King, whatnot, whilst at the same time scoring every single card you could ever possibly pull off the top, like automatically, by dint of flexibility. We have seen reductions to Annihilation barges, Catacomb Command barges, the Obelisk. Oh boy, and Triarch Praetorians and Triarch Stalkers in addition. And the Tesseract Vault is also up, I believe, 35 points. The T-Vault went up. It was 400. It is now, 420, so at 25 points. But yeah, overall, I think Necrons kind of came out of this just fine and should be okay too. Here is the most, I think, positively changed or equal with GSC. We have Orcs. So there is a lot of green here, and there is no red. So nothing went down. Nothing went up Orcs wise. Beast Snagger boys and boys both went down. I believe 1 point per model. So 105 versus 95, 1 point per model, pretty much they all went down. Big mechs in Mega Armor, and big mechs with shock attack guns all went down. 65 points for a big mech with a shock attack gun is pretty dang good.
Yep.
Def Dreads, Def Copters, Morkanaut, Mega Knobs, Commandos, Kill Rig, Hunter Rig, Gorkanaut, Tank Busters, all down. Mega Knobs down across the board. They are now 35 points per model, so 70 for 2 at the min, 210 at the top for 6. Nathan, how do you feel about the Orcs changes?
Pretty warranted. They kind of went through one of the biggest changes in the last update. Both rules and points. It seemed that probably only one of them was necessary. Either they keep the good rules and you pay for them, or you just change the rules. In the end, they got both, and that ended up being a little bit overboard.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of not righting wrongs, but it is rebalancing some of the things after the rules changes. And I think they're quite healthy. I actually think that a lot of them are things like Commandos going down, which feels like a bit of a must unit, but because you have to take them as 10, they were 135. That felt bad. General Boys going down is a nice change. I think it opens up some of the other builds again. So, I actually expect Orcs to... I don't think they're going to fly to the top of the meta again, but I expect them to be much more in the center now.
Yeah, I totally agree. I really like all the Orcs changes. Only ones I would have liked to see was some of the big hunt units, like the Squighog boys, possibly go down a little bit. But apart from that, Gorkanauts and Morkanauts both going down 15. A lot of the stuff that makes up some more of the DACA-centric lists went down, in addition to the Hunter Rig and the Kill Rig as well, which is kind of cute. So, but those models should be cheap by dint of their logistical nightmares. So, totally fair. All right, but Orcs made out really well. They're the second most benefited by the points changes army. I believe GSC a little bit more benefited than Orcs. All right. Oh, sorry, no, other way around. Orcs are a little more benefited than GSC. Yeah. All right, moving on to generic Space Marines. Typhus, do you know what you're talking about here? You wanted to send it off?
Yeah, basically they are looking at this and seeing, so what's being played in Dark Angels Gladius? Yeah, that one goes up. And what's being played in Blood Angels? Well, let's put that one up as well. And everything else that isn't seeing any play, like having Intercessors or Invader ATVs, which I don't think I've seen this edition.
Nope.
They are just going down. And I think it is kind of warranted. Like the whole Biologies Eradicator squad combo is sometimes oppressive in Gladius. And Assault Intercessors with jump packs were so too cheap. I still feel like for what they do, they are still too cheap. But I might be, still salty about having 85-point Zephyrim when Intercessors are 90.
Yeah.
And all the units that weren't really played, like different Storm Speeders, Suppressors, Terminators go down, which I don't think will still warrant them being played.
The only one I look at is the Storm Speeder Hammer Strike at 125. is starting to look okay. 150 for the Thunderstrike, still not enough. Sorry, still too much. But yeah, Hammer Strike for 125 might be all right. And that's the only one that even might be okay. And still probably not. All versions of Terminators went down because Terminators unfortunately kind of suck at the moment by dint of people being equipped to kill much more durable versions of those chassis. And Victor Warsuit went down to 125. But yeah, overall, the Apothecary Biologist Eradicator package went up 35 points because the Apothecary went up, the Eradicators went up, and Fire Discipline went up, the Gladius Task Force enhancement. So a holistic hit to that package. Is that enough, do you think, Nathan, for people to put it back on the shelf?
I was a little bit surprised that Eradicators went up as well. I didn't think Eradicators was so much the issue. It's more the package that was the issue. So maybe the character, in fairness, is now 70 points. What was it? Was it 45 before or 55 before?
55 before. Ludicrous.
It was silly cheap. So 100% that thing needs to go up. Fire Discipline is a very, very powerful ability. So I don't mind that unit going up. It was a Control-Alt-Delete function for a lot of armies when you play, especially anything without a 4+ Inbun and big. But yeah, I think overall... So the only difficulty is Space Marines as its own faction is in a weird place, but because it knocks onto everybody else, I think it's all the balances are roughly correct.
The only one that bothers me is Vanguard Veterans with Jump Axe. They were paying for the Blood Angels, making that unit feel quite good, whereas so many other Space Marine varieties, like that's the only quick melee unit that they have. So yeah, I think that one going up is a bit of a much similar to last MFM's Scourge's hit, where it was like, this feels unfair to Drakari players that they should have to pay more because Eldari players can take Scourges in their Yunari list. But fair. Overall, I think Space Marines lost more than they gained, unfortunately, because the gains are on units that are pretty rough. Why, like a Redemptor Dread is still 210 points, I don't know. Like, you could have dropped it by 20 points, and I still don't think you'd see it.
Yeah, and now Reavers being 15 points less than Assault Intercessors with Jump Axe, you still won't play them.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, it does not matter. Like on my previous episode, which was units that have never been good in 10th edition, Reavers was the first one I think I mentioned in Space Marines. And not only, Reavers have been bad spanning generations of our game now. Since they've come out, they have never been good. And they still suck. Sorry?
They could be more popular after Space Marine 2, maybe.
Oh yeah.
No.
Also, we forgot to mention that Rowboat Gilliman now costs the same. Also, he got the same 15 points reduction that the Lion got, coming in at 285, and I still don't think you're going to see him, unfortunately.
Yep.
All right, on to Space Wolves. One that many thought was going to get slaughtered actually has come out not too bad, but did take increases on probably their 3 best units. Actually, no, they did not. Because in my opinion, their best units are the freaking characters that go in the Thunderwolves, not the Thunderwolves. But Beyond the Fell-Handed, Logan Grimnar are on foot, not on the Storm Rider. Storm Rider stayed the same. And Thunderwolf Cav all went up, while Longfangs and Skyclaws and Hounds of Morkai and Wolfguard all went down. Oh boy, I can't wait to see those models on the tabletop. Typhus, what do you make of these changes?
I think they were needed. Like, when we were talking about factions that felt very bad to play against, Wolves were one of those. If you couldn't deal with 18 Thunderwolves rushing you turn 1 and giving you 1, maybe 2 turns of shooting, you were done. And it wasn't very fun and interactive gameplay, and I'm happy they got hit so hard, because the average list loses like 150 points when we are already talking about the Assault Intercessors with Jump Axe also, which you are playing usually 15. So
yes, absolutely right. So I should have clarified. Thunderwolf Cab for 6 of them went up 40 points. Yeah. So once again, the second biggest hit we've seen in line with Bulgrin, and only just a couple of 10 points less than the Triumph got hit. Is that enough, do you think, to put them back on the shelf, or are people just going to trim the fat, take less jump back intercessors, and still go with 18 Thundercav?
I still think you will play. Like, if you are playing Thundercav, you're playing 18 of them. And also there's the nerf to the first turn ingress enhancement.
Yep.
So that's another points that are increasing the list. I feel if you are playing this faction, you need to lean on the jail style that opponent cannot kill. So if you are dropping some cavalry, you are suddenly making your list not as efficient. So maybe you are moving into playing then like something like Gladius or Champions of Ras. But then why would you take one squad of cavalry with how awkward it is to maneuver? Maybe that's not the play. And yeah, I'm not sure why would you drop cavalry. I would just trim other stuff, probably drop Wolfen altogether or stuff like that.
I thought Logan only went up 10 points, but he went up 15 points, which is, not insignificant.
You're still playing.
Bjorn, oh, yeah, for sure. Bjorn up 10, Logan up 15, and 40 points on Thundercav. That's 120, 135, 145 just on Bjorn, Logan Grimnar, and 18 Thundercav.
Bjorn wasn't necessarily always played. Like, for his point cost, you could take way more stuff that could jail your opponent. So
yeah, I agree. I think Bjorn is probably the likely thing to end up getting cut from this to offset the changes, unfortunately, even though I love Bjorn. I adore him. Nathan, anything to add on the Wolves?
No, not so much. They got a couple of points hits in the last one, so I think it's more in line now where, again, like Black Templars, like a Cursed Cultist, if you spam 3 things of it or 5 things of it, it will now cost you points to do so.
Fair. All right, on to one of, I believe, the most backhanded beneficiaries of the meta changes, Tau Empire. They saw a hilarious reduction in Commander Farsight by 10 points. He now costs 95, and I think he's actually sick for 95 points. Then we saw Kroot Carnivores, both varieties go down. Actually, everything that's Kroot related went down because now they don't have a detachment. And so they all went down, except for Krutox Riders, who one of will cost you now 40 points, which is fair enough because very similar to the single Locust Destroyer. I think they're still very good.
All of those units got nerfed. Like single model that you just use for actions got more expensive.
Piranhas went up by how much per model? By 5 points per model, and Riptides went up by 10 points per model. But that is the sum total of the changes to the Tau Empire. Nathan, we'll start with you, mate. What do you make of these?
So, Rampagers went down. So, the question to you two, is there now a Kroot jail list that actually Donkey Kongs people?
Actually, Donkey Kong's people, you have to model them with the barrels. If it doesn't throw barrels, you're not allowed to put me in jail. That's the rules.
So
190 points for 6 of them is not wild. Actually, that's pretty. That's kind of
think like Kroot Carnivores also being quite cheap and being able to cycle them. There might be something there. I would first need to see this happen because before WTC we're testing the Kroot jail, and my God, was it disappointing.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
I had people try and put me in Kroot jail, and I deploy. So the first game it sucked, but I still won. And then the second game, I literally deployed my 15 Scions on the table instead of putting reserve, and they like literally went straight through 40 Kroot. It was hilarious. Like they were charging the Kroot and beating the crap out of them. It was tragic as hell. Yeah. But I do think there's something there. There's something. I don't believe you're going to go take the Kroot hunting back. But I believe in Kauyon, Monka, or Retaliation Cadre, you could find a reason to take some of these things to get some more control of the battlefield.
I don't mind free Rampagers if you want some counter charge. Like it is okay, not great, but okay.
Riptide's going at 10 points. Does that even touch the sides? Whenever I look at
no, you still play free.
Yeah, whenever I look at a good Tau list, it has so much stuff in the list. It's like going to be, I just feel like it's going to be so easy to just move the beans around and make the points for these changes.
Yeah. You will drop that single Krutox you had in your list.
Correct.
Because that just offsets Riptides and maybe Piranhas, depending if you had any of the upgrades or whatnot that you could drop.
Well, yeah, just dropping the Krutox, which was 30, completely offsets the Riptides. Yeah, done. All right, on to what I believe is the most heavily hit meta list of the past, of the edition so far. So Thousand Suns have been catching strays, but not catching hands for the entirety of 10th edition, in my opinion. And it's probably for the best that they've been incrementally nerfed. thus far. But I think GW have finally realized that this faction is not going away. They're very much the Eldari of 8th edition, where GW was like Tiki Touchwood with them, and they just kept annihilating everyone for months. And this is what Thousand Sons have been doing, in my opinion, in 10th edition. Now they have a wall of red. Every single character, with the exception of the Zangor Shaman, has gone up. And that includes Magnus. 5 Rubik Marines has gone up. 10 Rubik Marines costing the same amount of points. The Vortex Mutolith Beast, the thing that just went down, has just gone up again. In addition to Forge Fiends, 3-man Zangor Enlightened. And this is going to be a lot.
I have an opinion that probably isn't shared by many people. I don't think this was warranted. I think after WTC, we didn't get to play as much to see how effective the nerf of indirect torrent was. And I don't think this army was that good. I know the stats shown that, and probably to some extent you needed to nerf them, but I hate how this makes the faction play even more into what you already were very scarce with. Because with how the Cabal points mechanic works, you still need to get those Cabal points. Now you'll get less, so you'll probably make an army that has even less other units, but you still need to hit that 19 Cabal points breakpoint, which will be harder to do nowadays. And other units that you wouldn't play didn't go down. Like, why would you play Land Raider, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the opinion this is the knife edge. This is that it's now free fall for Thousand Sons, because for the longest time, Thousand Sons were in very ingenious ways and very cleverly finding ways to get around and maintain what you're talking about, the critical mass of Cabal points that you need to make this army function when it essentially has 4 freaking units, and those units are like battle line plus character units. Yeah. And of course, the Vortex Beast came in and padded things out a bit, but now I do not know where Thousand Sons players go from here to get a strong list that actually functions in missions. Because I'm of the opinion, if the second you force your Thousand Sons opponent to trade anything, they have just like pretty much lost the game, because they're just not going to have much of an army. Nathan, what do you think?
So it's a little bit like we discussed earlier. When they have so few units, it is very difficult to balance them. They don't pivot well. But it's a little bit of that. We give them a little nerf. They're still top of the meta. We give them a little nerf. They're still top of the meta. They give a little nerf. They're still top of the meta. They are arguably, pre these points, the best teams list.
100%. I was about to say that. They are the premier teams list in the game.
Which, obviously, teams top of the meta is not necessarily the demographic of who they do balance updates for. They don't actually stipulate who they do them for, but it is more of a case of there's a much wider audience to think about when you actually do balance updates. So if it hurts a couple of Thousand Sons players, but other people have a better game into them, there is a little bit of that aspect to consider. It is, like Typhus said, you're now pushed down that route even more, but it's difficult to balance a book that has, an index at the moment, that has fundamentally kind of a busted army ability.
Yeah.
It is the most powerful, but the most annoying to work around. So it's that point now where, yes, if you spam that list, your list is going enough points that, like you say, you have to drop the chaff because that's your only real spare points.
Yeah.
So the damage output is still very much there. Magnus is still a game-winning model. But yes, it now will be a case of they have to play with their somewhat squishy Marines. Can they still actually push the scores that they need to? And I'm not sure if they can or not.
And this army is also suffering from not having many units to choose from.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, it's an army that only functions off its characters. It does not function. You cannot play MSU. You cannot not play Hero Hammer, Thousand Sons. Yeah. You need to have like minimum 5 characters, and even that's way unders for like doing the most you can get out of this faction. What I want them to do is, in the balanced data slate, pretty much just you stop putting the points up on characters and take all the Cabal points off the characters and put them on the units. Just put all the Cabal points on the units. So you have less reasons to freaking have to take the characters in order to have a list.
Imagine Land Raider giving you two Cabal points.
Oh, mate, make it give you 4. Who gives a shit? Just do it. But yeah, Thousand Suns are a rip. RIP. I have no idea where they go from here, and I'm interested to see. And also, I will say, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with Thousand Suns taking a turn at the bottom for a little while. That's kind of fine for me. In the cyclical nature of, ebbs and flows of the meta, if Thousand Suns have to take their licks for 3 months in order to get figured out and come back to a place of balance, like if GW needed to smack them to the bottom to bring them back up to the middle, I'm totally fine with that. But we'll have to wait and see if that's what ends up happening.
I'm also not sure they're dead in teams.
No, I don't know.
But they will be way more volatile.
It will literally be, does Magnus win this matchup? And dead set, there's still a bunch of matchups Magnus just freaking owns. Yeah. So
because you can't tell me that a list that is consistently 20-0ing people for people who play that system now doesn't. Okay, fine. Now it's 17-3.
Yeah,
it's still I don't know. We'll see where they are.
All right, Tyranids. We have 2 factions left, and Tyranids is one of the ones that I think made out like bandits. First and foremost, they saw very few increases. I mean, the only 2 very impactful ones to meta lists is the single Pyrovore going up, just like Typhus said. The single utility, everything went up, and Lictors went up 5 points per model. Apart from that, they are virtually untouched. Old One Eye went up a little bit, but then Carnifexes went down, meaning that the amount that Carnifexes went down, meaning if you took 2 Carnifexes and Old One Eye, I think you still saved 10 points. 230 for 2 Carnifexes and 150 for Old One Eye versus 140 for one Old One Eye and 250 for the Carnifexes. So you still save 10 points on the two Carnifexes Old One Eye combo. So whoop-de-doo. Who was taking Old One Eye without the Carnifexes, boys? Have you said, was this something I hadn't seen yet? Was this on the whiteboard and I wasn't in work that day?
I've played it a few times. It's okay in Crusher.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. Yep.
Forsman took it to the WTC. It just took Lone Op, Old One Eye.
There you go.
As a little linebacker.
Staying with you, Nathan, because I know you're a Tyranid, you're a bug boy. How do you feel about these changes?
Yeah, they make sense. Single Pyrovores, single Lictors, a Lone Up for 55 points. I know they've only gone up 5, but a Lone Up for 55 points was a bit crazy.
Free Ingress also was very useful for mission play.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they had a lot of. They could probably still go up another 5 points and still be somewhat reasonable. Carnifexes, I think it was more of a case of you never saw them outside of, like we said earlier, Old One Eye. This makes them. I still don't think you'll see people take single Carnifexes, but it's a little bit more playable and it's a little bit more realistic with it. So, for example, at the old points, a single Carnifex was the same as a Horospex, and it's just like, well, that doesn't quite make sense. They should be a little bit cheaper. Overall, other little things. Von Ryan's Leapers went down 5 points. It just makes them a little bit more in line with. They are probably slightly worse than some of the other units that are 75 previously.
Yep.
So they went down. Winged Hive Tyrants, again, they were a little bit pricey at 210. So not unreasonable that it went down 10 points. So no massive movers or shakers in Tyranids. They're in a really good spot at the moment. So, yeah, I think they're overall pretty good.
I've got 3 bones to pick with the lack of Tyranid changes. Both versions of the Norns, why didn't they go down? They both could have gone down by 20 points and still probably wouldn't have seen much play. And why is the freaking Exocrine still 135? Oh,
I don't mind those. I still think Exocrine wasn't a free off in every list. You were sometimes playing 2.
So Exocrine's a weird one because I've had this particular argument with people before. If you compare it to things of its type, say a Death Guard Predator,
PBC or Pred. Okay, yeah, Pred.
Or if you compare it to a CSM Predator, it's kind of that's I guess its main like not rival, but like similar type thing.
Counterpart,
Yes,
yeah.
an exocrine is slightly tougher. It's got a couple of extra wounds, but gun for gun, it's
I mean, it's
not-
that's fair because the exocrine's gun is better than any one gun or any two guns on the pred.
but it can't split.
It can't split. It's one gun. Yeah, I get you.
And
yeah,
it
that's
cannot shoot with anything in melee. So.
Oh yeah, it's trash tier. Yeah, melee.
Yeah, or like if there's a 2-man squad in front of it, like you need to fire the big gun instead of shooting, all the storm bolters, havocs, whatnot.
Yeah.
To just clean it while you shoot something hard into the actual target, right?
Yeah, that's fair. Still, not.
And do you feel the Predator is overpowered in Death Guard? Not really. It's just okay.
Not really. Only time when Preds feel OP is in Renegade Raiders. Stupid bastards. But yeah, 100%. The Norns. Why are they still 290 and 275? Chuck them down. Chuck them way down. Their models are too sick to not get used.
They're a little bit of that weird break point though, because if you drop them 20 points each, I will be taking 5 of them.
Oh, I threw out 20 points off the cuff, off the whimsy. Yeah, they could go down 5, 10 points. They're just going down something just to make
Assimilator being more expensive than Emissary still is weird to me. But
it just inherently has a bad ability with the fact that you pretty much only take one of them because one half of the ability is trash. The other one is way too good. So, which actually unfortunately means you go to an objective and you sit on it, which actually makes them not very fun to play with. Like I've got a quad Norn list which I've played a couple of games with, and it literally is cool. Your army can't kill me in one turn, but there's 5 turns in a game. So I've sat on an objective and I eventually just die. So unless you come charge me on my objective, you're not really bothered by it.
How much is a GUO with endless gift? Is it 325?
Oh, yeah, but something like that. Is it 3 or 5?
But it is not OC15, and I think that's the main.
This is true. This is true. Great unclean one. Where are we?
Or a 2-up save does come into it sometimes. Because
4 I feel no pain is pretty source too.
Yeah, true.
230 for the GUO, and then
30 for endless gift.
Yeah, so 260. So the GUO is 15 points cheaper than the Emissary.
Not 15 OC yet. I think that ends the conversation.
But a GUO can't kill a Rhino. I tried.
That's true.
Many times.
Mate, I have sandbag GUOs with scouts often. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's bad.
All right, so we're on to our last faction. World Eaters catching some hands. Angron is up. Chaos Spawn is up. And inexplicably, Master of Executions are up. That's the one that doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why the Mo got hit by another 10 points. It's up to 110. Angron got hit by 20. He's now on 435. And the 2 Spawn went up by 5 points for the package, which probably doesn't touch the sides. Only thing that went down is the DP with Wings is now 170 points, down from 195. So actually went down 25 points.
I don't know if you still feel them.
I still don't think you. Yeah, I don't know what they do. Whatever.
Yeah, I feel like the Angron and Spawn changes are okay. Like, if anything, that was very annoying for me when I was playing against World Eaters was Angron and the Spawn. Like, everything else felt fair for what they costed and what they done. And Spawn were just too tough, and Angron is just Angron. It is an absolute lottery whether you will be having a good day or a very bad day, right?
Yeah, totally agree.
So,
Nathan, what do you think about... Oh, sorry, keep on, Typus.
No. Nathan can give his closing thoughts.
So, Angron's a weird one because he's not overcosted, but if he comes back, he's massively undercosted, which is inevitably an issue with any of those kind of abilities. So, it's that weird thing of how do you point, not necessarily Angron, but how do you point things? Do you point things for the worst versions, or do you point things for the the general version? Like, I don't know, one thing in one detachment sucks, one thing in another detachment's broken. It's how you point things. Yes, you kind of feel like you have to Angron, so you have to point Angron because he is a force multiplier, and everybody takes him. I don't think I've seen a World Eaters list in a very long time who didn't take him. So anything that's auto-include kind of feels like it should have a points increase.
You clearly weren't paying attention to Australia at the WTC, mate.
My bad.
Never mind. You're totally fine not to. But yeah, I totally agree. There could have been some more reductions here, I believe, especially to offset what was happening here. Like, there's no reason for a Mauler Fiend to cost more than a Predator, in my opinion.
Yeah, makes
chuck
sense.
A Mauler Fiend down 10 points. A tokenary something there would have been totally fine.
Yeah.
Also, let them walk over walls. It's so
for the love
annoying.
of God.
It's literally in their fluff in the book. Literally, and every single one of them, it's in the fluff where they climb siege walls. Just let them move the walls.
The whole premise, like Vashdor effed up when he wrote the description and then didn't implement the design because. Anyway, that is going to bring us to an end of all the points reviewed and dissected of this MFM for October of the year of our Lord 2024. Closing thoughts, gents. We usually give a rating system. So out of 10, how happy you guys are with this MFM? Typhus, out of 10, how happy are you with it?
Like, with my Polish happiness and me being very positive outlook in life, probably around 5, 6.
Glorious, mate.
I think the main thing that I'm missing is I feel some units are still not getting played.
Yep.
And I would like more internal balance changes, and I'm aware that certain factions is very hard with only points, like Sisters. I think it's impossible with only points.
I agree.
But other factions, I can see that happening, like we just mentioned World Eaters, why some units didn't go down that are never played. Like, why Helldrake is still 210 points? Like,
Jesus.
Come on.
Yeah.
What's the reason? So, yeah. I would like more internal balance changes.
Nathan, would you give it out of 10?
So, this actual update, I'd give 7 out of 10. The actual where the meta is right now, obviously it'll change with this, but I think the meta is closer to like an 8 or a 9. I actually think it's in a really good place right now.
All right, so I am going to agree with Nathan in my one, and I'm going to go with a 7 out of 10. I've taken a point off because of the absolute WTF that occurred to Drukhari. I've taken a point off for the lack of points changes for Chaos Demons. And I took what did I take the other point off for? It was something. It was good. It was very insightful and clever, and I'm sure you all agreed with me. But anyway, 7 out of 10 is what I'm giving this one. Thank you so much, boys, for joining me. I think we are going into what is going to be a pretty interesting and I think extremely well-balanced next couple of months. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens next. We're going to go over and going to talk about lists. We're going to go through the same lists again. We're going to the same list of factions. We're going to start at the top, go to the bottom, and talk about what we think off the cuff these new lists and archetypes will look like moving forward. And if we think there are any fringe builds that were hanging in the wings that now look a lot more enticing. I hope you guys will join us over there. In addition, make sure you hang around for the song from my brother's band. Hopefully you guys have all been enjoying that. I certainly have. And gentlemen, tell us again one more time about that show you may or not be doing this week or next week.
So Nathan mentioned first, I will go now. So we will be focusing mostly about all the stuff that regarding the team event that we will be attending this weekend. I don't know when you will air this episode, Adam, but we will be going live probably in like a few hours from now. And we'll be talking how we think it impacts all the team lists and all the team comps that we're going to that event, and how we feel this will shape up the team's meta. And especially probably more focusing on the rules changes, because I find those will change a lot how the meta will shake up.
Beautiful. Hope you go check out some Enter the Matrix goodness. Thank you so much again, boys, for coming on. Please go and join us over on part 2. We're about to go and record that right now. Say your good nights, Nathan and Typhus, or Piotr.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, got him.